everyone, and welcome to this live video with Liberty Park Music. Today we're going to look at how you can do what I was doing there, which is fleshing out your shuffle groove using ghost notes. So there's a few ways we can do this. A lot of the stuff I was doing there was combining all the things we're going to talk about today into one sort of pattern or one sort of exercise. But the first thing that let's look at is just like what I'm talking about when I say a shuffle groove. So a shuffle groove is effectively where you've got eighth notes in your hi-hat, but you're going to swing those eighth notes. So instead of dividing each beat by 2 and having 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you're going to divide each beat into 3 and miss the middle note. So 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. So if we have like a basic rock groove, for example, on the hi-hats with the bass and the snare, if we play a groove which isn't a shuffle groove, just a basic rock groove, it will sound like this. But then if we start to swing it to make it into a shuffle groove, it will sound like this. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a shuffle groove. So the first thing that I want to talk about when we're talking about accents and ghost notes is the hi-hat. So I personally, when I'm playing a shuffle groove, really like to articulate the hi-hat with accents on every downbeat and then ghost notes on the upbeats. So the first note of each beat, accents, and the third note of each beat, ghost notes. And I'm also, while doing that, I'm going to hit the on the beat with the accents, with the edge of the stick on the side of the cymbals. I'm not sure if you can see that, so I'll show you on the crash cymbal instead, sort of like that. And on the ghost notes, I'm going to use the tip of the stick on top of the cymbal like that. Okay? So instead of having just this flat feel, we're going to have this feel. It's got a really solid feel to it. So that's one thing you can do, is to really think about accenting your hi-hat in a very particular way to create emphasis to your shuffle groove. And you can do what I'd recommend doing is trying this idea while varying the bass drum, because inevitably you'll find it difficult to do a ghost note in your hi-hat while doing a bass drum. So don't just practice this groove with just the bass on 1 and 3. Try varying the bass drum across the bar, like so. Yeah, so try varying the bass drum. The difficulty will be to play, as I say, the bass drum with your ghost notes. And also try this at a ton of different tempos. So you can go from quite a steady, slow, plodding tempo, like I was playing there, or you can go much faster. So I've got a comment here from Hung Chang Wei saying, I'm never going to be able to coordinate my hands and foot like that. So that's a good point. Whenever you're trying this groove, you need to try at a really slow tempo. Otherwise you won't be able to coordinate it. Try at a really slow tempo and then gradually work your way up. And try and imagine it. Try and learn these grooves the same way that you would have learned basic rock and pop grooves without swing, you know, go through all the bass drum permutations across the bar. And then once you can do that, try swinging it. I wouldn't recommend trying these grooves until you've gone through all those basic bass and snare permutations when playing an 8th note rock or pop groove. So that's one thing we can do, is articulate the hi-hat in a particular way. The other one, as I said, is varying the bass drum. That's another way we can flesh out your groove. The main thing that I want to talk about today is adding ghost notes in the snare drum to help really flesh out your shuffle groove. So like I said before, we were playing the first and dividing each beat into three and playing the first and the third note of each beat. Now that middle note that we're missing out, we can fill in with the snare drum, okay? So if we strip that back and go back to just the hands, what was right, right, both, right, 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 both, right, would now become right, left, right, both, left, right, right, left, right, both, left, right. So we still have the snare on beat 2, and we still have the snare on beat 4. We still have this in the hi-hat, but in those gaps, so the middle triplet of each beat, we're putting a ghost note in the snare drum. Try and avoid this. It just sounds really flat, there's no momentum there, there's no groove there. So really make sure that the middle triplet, the snare that's in between your hi-hats is really soft. And then the snare that's with the hi-hats is really accented, like so. And when we combine that idea of using the hi-hat, articulating the hi-hat with ghost notes and accents with that snare drum idea, it can sound great. And also varying the bass drum like I was doing there. So that's one idea for you, filling in that middle triplet with snare drum ghost notes. The other thing is to try, when you're doing accents in this groove, try using rim shots on your snare drum. So a rim shot is where you're hitting the rim of the snare, the hoop of the snare, and the head, the snare drum head at the same time. So instead of this, so you're hitting the hoop and the head at the same time, that's a rim shot, and it makes your accents feel stronger and more powerful. I'll demonstrate that slowly for you. As opposed to this without rim shots. Still sounds good, you've still got a strong accent there, but the rim shot I think helps to articulate it in a stronger, more dynamic way. And it's also a variation in tone, you're getting a different tone from the drum, okay? So that's the next thing I'd recommend. So these are ideas to use when you're playing just a standard regular time shuffle groove. So with the snare on 2 and 4, vary your bass drum. Another way you can add ghost notes to flesh out your shuffle grooves is when playing a unison shuffle. So a unison shuffle is what I call a groove where your hands are playing the same pattern as each other. So they're both doing this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and they're both doing that rhythm like so. Okay, but the emphasis here needs to be on really strong accents on the backbeat. So 2 and 4, your bass is going to play 1 and 3. So the end product should be this. Okay, but to get to that stage, you're going to have to just learn the coordination. So both hands at the same time, bass on 1, like so. And then really focus on, again, the hi-hat is going to do. But then the snare is going to have. And it's all about the contrast between your ghost notes and your accents. Your ghost notes need to just be a whisper, and your accents need to be a raw, really powerful sound, like so. Okay, so I've got another comment from Hung Chang Wei. What kind of music do you normally use this for? So these generally triplets, and this is not exclusively, but generally they work really well in blues music or jazz music, swing music, so anything like that. You can check out grooves similar to this one. If you type into YouTube the Purdy Shuffle, the grooves that I'm playing now are all inspired by Bernard Purdy, who was a very famous drummer, played a lot of blues records. And this is the Purdy Shuffle. And there's other examples you can hear of this. There's actually a lesson going out on Liberty Park soon where I show you how to play Fool in the Rain by Led Zeppelin, in which John Bonham plays a groove which is very similar to the first groove that I did. So yeah, that's another idea. So you've got the idea of articulating the hi-hat, accents and ghost notes. You've got the snare drum in the middle triplet, playing ghost notes. You've got rim shots on the snare drum for the accents, and you've got that unison shuffle where your hands are in unison with each other, but you're really articulating ghost notes off the beat. Sorry, accents on beat 2 and 4, and ghost notes everywhere else. The next type of groove I want to look at is similar to the first groove that we did. So that shuffle where you're adding the snare in the middle triplet, but we're going to make it into a half-time groove. So what that means is the snare drum is no longer going to play on beat 2 and beat 4. It's going to play just on beat 3. So it's going to feel as though our music's slowed down by half the speed. It's half the speed that it was before, but it's not. It's just that we're placing the snare drum in a different place. So if we apply this to like a straight rock groove, instead of having 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we would have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And now if we make that into a shuffle groove, we'd have Now we can do the same thing with this groove that we did with the previous groove, in that we can fill that middle triplet of each beat with a snare drum. So instead of having 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we would have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and fill that middle triplet in with ghost notes in the snare drum. So our hands would go something like this: right, left, right, right, left, right. Another thing I like to do is to, in the first beat, instead of playing right, left, right, we're going to play right, left, both. Okay, so right, left, both, right, left, right, both, left, right, right, left, right. Like so. And then we can take this half-time groove and start varying the bass drum with it as well, like so. And then at a faster tempo. it's these grooves, you don't have to play them on the hi-hat. You can play them on the ride, you can play them on the crash cymbal. And when you're doing so, I suggest maybe trying to keep your left foot ticking over. So maybe on every beat or on 2 and 4, try use the bell of the ride cymbal. So instead of having just, you could have like so. So yeah, those are the things I'd suggest doing to flesh out your shuffle groove. Try thinking about accents, thinking about ghost notes. Try thinking about taking that grid that you're creating with the shuffle groove, 1, 2, 3, 4, and fill in that middle triplet of each beat with ghost notes in the snare drum. It can really give some real momentum to your grooves. Before we go, Liberty Park Music have kindly offered a discount coupon to anyone who has watched this video, which is which I believe gets you 30% off subscription to Liberty Park Music. So if you want to note that down, please do so. Just got a question. I've got a question here from Angelo Kelvakis. Is there a way to incorporate the hi-hat when playing on the ride? Yeah, of course there is. Yeah, so if you're playing this pattern on the ride cymbal instead, you could either keep the hi-hat going on every beat, like so. You could keep it going on the middle triplet, taking that place of the snare drum. So you'd have like this sort of thing. Which is obviously much harder. Or you could place it on the third triplet of each beat. So like that. Or you could just do it on 2 and 4. Yeah, by all means, that's a really good question. Try and get your, don't just add ghost notes with your snare or your bass or your ride cymbal in your right hand. Try and add ghost notes with, or embellish your shuffle groove with your left foot as well. That's a really good thing you can do. So great question, Angelo. So thanks for watching, everyone. Remember again, if you want that discount coupon, then there it is. And I'll see you very soon. Take care.